I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-Minute Convos, where I help you create a brand of your own unique real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Kirk Barbera. How are you doing on this wonderful, beautiful night?
I'm good, Angel. Did I say that correctly?
You did. I love how you said it,
close.
actually.
Okay.
You pressed into the gel part. Angel. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, love that. So tell me, what part of the world are you in right now, Kirk?
Today I'm in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, there we go. Beautiful San Antonio. Oh, how I loved that location. Well, do tell me which of your talents is responsible for us connecting at this time.
We were connected through Haleli Azwalai, and I do some marketing writing for her. So that's how we connected. Is I do podcast and video production and writing for business and other clients.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Who did you learn that skill from? That skill to be able to do both the writing and the video?
Well, that's a long story, but basically my background is writing. So I have a strong writing background. I've been trained at some think tanks and done some 4-year programs. I got my degree from the University of Colorado in film production. Film and television production. So I got to have my hands on a lot of equipment, doing editing and creating films and documentaries and all that good stuff for about 4 years in college. And then after that, I worked for some pretty prominent think tanks and a New York Times bestselling author. I got to kind of help his edit his book and then help him market it afterwards. And then, but like I said, I've been publishing in magazines, and I had a school newspaper when I was in college that I started my own with a friend, Sean Doherty, and so just stuff like that throughout my whole life. So it's pretty much what I've done my adult life since I was out of high school.
Why would you suggest to someone that's listening, Kirk, that they do what you've done by combining forces, if you would? And you didn't stick to the writing. It seems as though you've continuously grown, but use one format as the foundation. Why would you suggest other people that are listening do that?
Well, that's actually a really good question, because it's something I always struggle with. I mean, I think at the same, on one level, if I could be paid to primarily write, like paid good money, then I would probably do that. But I'm not quite there yet. So, and that's one of the hardest things I think you can do, is become so successful in just your writing that you make a good living. I don't think even very, best-selling authors, most of them I know for a fact do not live off of their writing. That's only one small chunk of what they make money from, speaking or consulting and things of that nature. So the truth is that it's pretty rare to get a full-time living in writing. It's not impossible, but it's pretty rare. And we live in a new media landscape. So you need to understand that distribution is changing dramatically. And it's been changing for the past 10 years, really. So if you want to be a writer, the path of putting out your content or, writing something, sitting in your little cabin in the woods, and then finding a big magazine, the New Yorker or something like that, and then they pick it up and like, oh my gosh, we love you. And then they, pass it to millions, and then you become this famous person. That was rare in the past, but it's even more rare today. It just does. It's very, very difficult. If you can't get a job as a junior writer, eventually a staff writer or on the editorial board of some major magazine, which again is like a teeny percentage of people can do that out of the millions that want to be writers and such. So I always tell people, the advantage and disadvantage of our time today, the advantage is that there's more writers and more creators than ever. The disadvantage is that there's more writers, and so there's more competition than ever before in the history of humanity. And the advantage, though, is that you now have control over your own work. So that means you can you have control over the production and the distribution and of your end product, which is something that creators never really had.
Yeah,
they always had someone above them. So.
Yeah, definitely. You had to create the product and then pay for the platform. And now the platform is pretty much there. Yeah, is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is there are platforms. There's YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, podcasts, Twitter,
Yes.
And all the myriad small ones. Those are platforms that billions of people are on every day. Now, the challenge, of course, is getting your content to them. And so as a writer, a producer of any kind today, a content creator today needs to think about how and what type of content they're going to get into the eyeballs of people out there and these platforms. And in the past, if you were like a Hemingway or something, you could write a novel and send it to your editor. And then even when Ray Bradbury, it took him a long time, but when he finally got published for, I believe it was The Martian Chronicles, he had pushed really hard, but he had to work months and years to get picked up by an editor and to get picked up by, an agent who bought the manuscript and then decided that they're going to publish this. So it took him a long time. So in other words, there's these gatekeepers and they had to, work to get the gatekeepers. One of my favorite writers, Ayn Rand, it took her several years to get some of her first manuscripts published. And she went on to be one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. But she had to go through these very difficult publishers, and convince, a handful of individuals who all knew each other that her manuscript was worth buying. And they all rejected her. I think the Fountainhead was rejected like 22 times or something like that. From all, it was one guy, I think at like Penguin or Macmillan, who finally accepted her. The point is that today you still have those people, the guardians in a sense, but you also have an opportunity that those other writers did not have, which is to distribute the stuff on your own. To do like what Jay-Z did, where he put all his CDs in the back of his trunk, went down to New York City and just kind of started selling them in the back of his trunk right after clubs. And he just hustled and made it happen. And then he, made his own deals and so on. So, that type of distribution is much easier to do from your home. You don't have to sell it out of your trunk. That doesn't mean, but you do need to learn media skills, marketing skills. You need to learn other ways of getting your content out there. You can't just put it on the internet and expect people to come to you. You have
to think. It doesn't work. Yeah,
so marketing is almost a prerequisite skill to being a writer in the 21st century.
Yeah, that well said. Well said. Now, where's the best place for someone that's listening to connect with you?
Well, my first and last name.com is simple enough. Kirk, Kirk, Barbera, Barbera.com. And that's my central hub for everything, basically.
And there we go. Kirk, let's switch gears for a moment now and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. Kirk, what is your earliest childhood memory?
Let's see. That's a good question. I actually have a weird relationship with my childhood memories. I don't remember them very often. So the one that always sticks out to me, and I know there are things before this. I remember brief snippets of playing baseball when I was younger, but I remember when I was 9. So this is old for a childhood memory, but I was 9 years old. I was not good at school, in school for anything except baseball, which wasn't really even school. It was an outside sport. So I was really bad at everything, except everyone told me that I was a good reader. Now, today, looking back at that, I don't know the value. It's weird to think of like what kind of job is there as a reader, but whatever. But that my reading comprehension, as they called it, was pretty good for what they had told me. Math, history, everything else sucked. So I got it in my head that I could read anything. So I remember one of my teachers saying that one of the greatest books ever written was a book called The Iliad by Homer. So I made my, the ancient Greek story of the Trojan War and the Greeks who, invaded Troy. And so I made my father buy the Iliad for me, a 9-year-old boy, and I started reading it, and I cried the whole way through. And the reason I cried was because I didn't understand one single word of what was going on.
But you read it.
Well, I forced myself to I don't know if it was considered reading. I forced myself to go through the whole thing just to say that I did, which is a skill that I have to this day. I could make myself plow through challenging works, very deep, intense literature that I don't quite understand yet, but that, through pushing for it, I get a little bit of an understanding, and then I come back and I get a better understanding at the second time, which is a skill that I wish more people would learn in school, but they don't. But anyway, so that's one of my earliest memories, is reading through the Iliad, crying because I didn't understand who Peleus's father's brother's sister-in-law who did this to that. It's it's like this weird genealogy and the way that they Homer wrote and the way that this translator wrote everything, and it's just so many fathers of fathers, and that's when they talk about Achilles, they say Peleus's son 70% of the time when they're referring to Achilles. Peleus' son, stabbed Hector. Oh my gosh, who is Peleus' son again? I forgot. And they do that with everybody, every character. That's only one character. And it's they do that with Hector, and they do that with Agamemnon and Menelaus, and it's oh my gosh. So one of the interesting things, though, is that has led me to a deep love of literature over the years, and a passion for understanding Homer's work, particularly the Iliad. So I've read the Iliad numerous times at this point. And it's a very interesting, and it's one of the most important pieces of literature in Western civilization. It has definitely shaped our whole culture. And I remember hearing that all the time and never really recognizing what that meant. But now, as I'm older, I'm 33. I'm actually just finishing it up again. I have one right in front of me. If anybody's interested, this translation, I've read most of the major translations. This one is by E.V. Rieu, R-E-I-U. And it's one of the best translations I've ever read, R-I-E-U, and E-V-R-I-E-U. So it's one of the best translations I've ever read because it's not as flowery or convoluted as some of the other translations who feel some kind of weird need to use the syntax and language structure that Homer did, or something different than what we use. This is definitely readable in terms of the structure of the sentences and everything.
I love it. Well, now I'm intrigued to ask, if we fast forward to when you were 12 years old, what was your favorite song?
Song? Man, music is not my thing. That's sorry. That's I definitely didn't have favorite songs back. I mean, well, actually, now that you make me think about it, maybe there was something. I think I listened to a lot of oldies because that's what my parents listened to. Right. So I only listened to golden oldies. I think what's that "When the Lion Sleeps Tonight" song? I think that was it. Okay, I don't know if it was 12, but it was something like that.
Well, my friend, we've arrived at our destination. But before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. We're going to move pretty quickly here. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
Have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
No.
Are you married?
No.
Do you have children?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Yes.
Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
No.
How about 3 hours a week?
Yes.
What about screen time, the phone and or the computer? Is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
Less than 8.
Kirk, if you had to share with us your own unique real statement, a statement that represents who you are, what would you say that is?
Literature is the most, let me put it, literature is to personal development what fracking is to oil production.
Love it. You definitely thought about that before, didn't you?
Yes.
Love that. Love that. Well, Kirk, this has been a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
No, thank you, everybody. I it's interesting. You dredged up some good memories that I didn't remember because I don't think about them often. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Kirk Barbera. Thank you, my friend, for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.